Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artist Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another podcast episode on the Artist Index. And this episode, we have a special guest. All of our guests are special, but this is a special guest because this is his first podcast ever. And you probably heard of him, and you've probably seen him grow up. And I'm going to let him introduce himself to you, and we'll take it from there as we always do.
Awesome. Hi, this is Quinn Sullivan. It's great to be here, man.
Quinn, I never know where this is going to go. I always take a chance, no matter how bad I look doing it. But could you, do you have any stories to tell about your name?
My name?
Yes.
Quinn. Any stories? Well, I know my parents had a few names in mind that they wanted to name me, but I think the story goes with my name. I guess there was they were watching David Letterman, I think, one night, and, there was like the ending credits, and I guess one of the producers' names was Quinn, and I think my dad had looked at my mom and was like, Quinn, that's a cool name. So I think, and they both have different versions of why they named me Quinn. So I think that's like probably the only thing offhand I could think about right now. But
yeah,
that's pretty fun. Yeah.
I mean, I always ask people, because even the most normal, quote unquote names. People sometimes have like stories to tell, not just how they got their name, but how other people react to them. Like I'm wondering, for example, I had an intern, my very first intern, and her name was Anne Margaret, the girl with two first names. And people would say, well, what's your last name? And she'd say Margaret. And they say, no, that's your middle name. And she said, no, that's my last name. Well, what's your middle name? I don't have a middle name. So my assumption is with Quinn Sullivan, they're like, well, what's your first name? Because Quinn's the last name as well as the first name, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. I guess no one's ever asked me that before. That's a good question, though. Yeah, I think that's the only thing I could probably really think of. And Quinn is a unique name. I mean, I don't know a lot of people that are named Quinn, so it feels pretty good to have a name like that. That's kind of not really maybe common in most people.
Right, and for you, especially. Being a performer, boy, it was great because you didn't have to alter it or do any of that kind of thing.
No. I mean, like a lot of people, they go by like another name or something like that. But for me, I just always just loved my name, Quinn Sullivan. I just think it's a good name. I'm proud of it, and it's great. I'm Irish.
Yeah, you're sticking with it, right?
Yeah.
Let's for the people who don't know, who didn't see you. Let's start now where you are now, and then roll back the clock to how did a local kid, and when I say local, what town are you from originally?
I'm from New Bedford.
Okay, you are from New Bedford. Okay, because everybody uses South Coast because it covers all the sins. But how did a local kid from New Bedford end up playing with the likes of B.B. King and many other people? So if you could just take it from there. This is your shot.
Well, I started to play guitar. I picked up a guitar when I was 3 years old, and I didn't know that any of that would happen when I was 3, obviously. But I began to play when I was 3, and my parents bought me a little acoustic guitar. It was by the name of First Act. That was the company, and they bought it for me for Christmas one year. And there was something about the guitar, I think, that I guess it's just like an immediate connection with it. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why it was like that. It really just was because it just was. Like I didn't have really anything else that I was doing that was like, I didn't really have any like obviously when you're a kid you have your brain is scattered and you're all over the place with stuff. But for me, when I got introduced to the guitar, it just became like an immediate like obsession for me. Like I just didn't want to do anything else when I was a kid. I just wanted to play guitar, and I just wanted to be in the moment with the instrument. And so, you know, a few years go by, I'm listening to a lot of music. They're taking me to festivals around the area. You know, I got to go to, I remember early on, one of the first like festivals that I got to go to was the Whaling City Blues Festival, which they used to have. And that was a big part of my childhood, because I remember the first year I went, Dickie Betts was headlining. And so that was really cool. And I had already been exposed to the Allman Brothers through my parents. And so I sort of knew Dickie and his playing and the whole entire thing. So it was cool. I remember I got to go, and I had my little guitar with me, and I would just be like walking around and like pretending I was on stage, because that was the thing for me. Like at that early age, I was just envisioning myself one day being able to be on a stage and being able to like play. And it was more of sort of like a fantasy for me. It wasn't really something that I would have thought would have ever been a reality for me. But yeah, a few years go by, and now I'm 5, and I start to take lessons full time, and I start to get a bit more serious about learning how to play, because I had just been strumming it and figuring it out on my own, but never had any proper guidance or lessons. So when I was 5, I started to take lessons by a guy by the name of Brian Cass, who's an incredible guitar player and an incredible person overall. And there was a music store. I don't think it's there anymore. It used to be called Top Music in Fairhaven, Massachusetts. And we went there every week. Once a week, I'd go at around 5 or 6 p.m. every week. And, you know, I would go in, and he would, you know, early on, it was just learning chords and learning, you know, structure. He never really forced any theory on me, which I'm kind of thankful for, because he just focused on playing and the music. He didn't really focus too much on you know, what chords were called and stuff like that. And that made me, I guess that made me just probably be more excited about it, because when you're a kid, you know, a lot of times you don't really want to know theory and you know when it's like, you know, math gets involved and all that. So it was just almost just fun, and it didn't have, you know, almost like no rules in some ways. Like it was more of just a fun thing for me to do, which made it more enjoyable. So yeah, I'd go in every week, and you know, at that time I was really getting into the Beatles heavily into the Beatles. And that was also another obsession for me when I was a kid. And they still are today. And it's funny, because they mean something totally different to me now than they did when I was a kid. But yeah, I was just super into the Beatles, and you know, so I would go in and I'd be like, I want to learn how to play Blackbird, or I want to learn how to play Twist and Shout. And he would be teaching me that stuff, and you know, this was when I was 5 or 6. And yeah, and it was just one of those things. I would just go in every week and do it. And eventually I started to do gigs and started to play around town, because there was these Beatles tribute shows that would happen locally that people would invite me to, because they knew I was playing and doing my thing. And also my parents had a lot of friends that were in bands like that would do George Harrison tributes or John Lennon tributes, and you know, they would kind of have me out as a guest or a special guest, or you know, have me play a couple of tunes. This is when I started to you know, really be able to start playing and being able to do it. So those early memories were like the first times that I was on stage. I remember, I think the first ever proper show I did was a John Lennon tribute at this club called Smugglers, which was in, I think, New Bedford or somewhere around here. And that was really cool, and you know, just a great first time on stage memory for me. And yeah, it kind of spiraled into me, you know, this is about a year later when I was 6, going on Ellen and being that. I mean, so that's like a big, huge moment for me, because first time on TV and first time doing anything like that. And this is like kind of crazy, because I had only been playing for 2 or 3 years, to jump from just playing in my room and playing locally to all of a sudden on TV at 6 was just kind of like, whoa, you know, and didn't have a lot of time to really take it in much, you know, at that time. It was just kind of like a whirlwind experience. So the way that happened was my dad had emailed a few producers of TV shows, and this is kind of like pre YouTube, like kind of like probably just when YouTube was starting to become like a thing, and social media really wasn't a thing yet either. So had none of that. So we had like a desktop computer, I think it was like a Windows or something, and he would email different producers of TV shows that he would research and find, because they were starting to do this thing where they'd have kids come on that could play guitar or sing or dance, or, you know, the child prodigy thing was so popular at that time. So, you know, we kind of caught on, like he kind of was up to date with all that stuff, and he would see kids go on and he'd be like, you know, that would be cool someday. But it never was something that we ever thought would actually come to fruition and happen. So we got an email, the email that he sent, he got an email back from the producer of Ellen, and they wanted to have me on the show. And I was obviously a kid, so I was just ecstatic and just super, super excited, and just blew me away that could actually happen. So we flew out to California, and I was on her show and ended up getting a pretty sweet guitar from her. I got a Gibson 335 that was just unbelievable, and I still have it today. And yeah, and that happened, and I was in first grade when that happened. It was kind of crazy. I remember coming home, and I remember just like going into school that the day after I got back, and everybody was just like clapping for me, and it was a big deal. It was a really big deal for me to do that. And that was like, you know, kind of when her show, I guess, was picking up a little bit, because I think she had only been around for maybe a year or two. So that was great. And another one of those times that you just never forget. And then a year later, I met Buddy Guy, and you know, that's really when my whole entire world of you know, my professional career totally took a turn for the best. And yeah, you know, so that's like early childhood Quinn right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a childhood.
Yeah, that's up until, yeah.
What was that?
That was up until about 8, right up until 8 years old. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you know, you join a long line of people from this area in performing arts. And that's the purpose. This isn't a plug in the middle of this podcast, but that's the purpose of the Artist Index, is to get these people all noted, the ones that are still, you know, trucking, and the ones who are passed on that either went uncelebrated, you know, unnoticed, or just were forgotten. I mean, we have like Nelson Eddy. I mean, this is back in the 30s and 40s. He was the guy that used to get dressed up like a Canadian mounted police and sing when I'm calling you. It became a standard, and it became a kind of a cliche. There was who was the drummer? Was it Gene Krupa that came out of here? I mean, there's a bunch of them.
So. I think so. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then you know, the Toon Weavers, some of the doo-woppers came out of here, and the Penguins, I think. So it's a long list. And how does it feel? I mean, you know, I don't want to ask you any of the stupid questions you've already been asked 100 times, but how does it feel now at that your career is how old now?
I guess my professional career would probably be about almost going on 11 years now. But I mean, as far as my entire, you know, music career, you know, probably, I mean, it started to me when I was 5. My first professional gig was when I was 5. So you know, about almost, you know, 15 years, it feels like. Yeah.
Right. Because even Smugglers, that was a historic place. I mean, there were so many groups that played there.
Yeah.
You know, the local guys, so to speak. It was one of the biggest hangouts in the city. So you know, you've been woven into the fabric of this area. Now, once you got with Buddy Guy, and how did he approach you, or is this another one of your dad's outreach efforts, or?
Sure. I mean, yeah. So basically, what happened with that was Buddy was coming to the Zeiterion, and I think this was the first or maybe second time he had come here and played. But yeah, I remember. So the way it worked was I remember seeing Buddy play on Eric Clapton's Crossroads Guitar Festival. My dad had gotten that DVD for me, the first ever Crossroads, which was in Dallas, Texas, and that was 2004 Crossroads. And I remember watching that and just being totally blown away by everybody, because it was kind of my introduction to guitar and really seeing people just go for it on stage. And that's just the perfect. I recommend that show to anybody to if they want to watch a really good guitar show. I mean, Crossroads Festival is just probably the best, because it's just the best of every single guitarist that to me is alive, that's alive today. And Buddy was just one of those guys that just came out, and I don't know what it was. It was just it was the way he was so commanding on stage, and it struck me, like even early on as a kid, just really struck me and just really blew me away of just how good he was, and how much he was able to just, he was just ripping it up on stage and just doing his thing, and it's really just inspiring. And so about a year or two after that, he was coming to the Zyterion, and this was 2007. My dad, he knew one of the owners, I think, of the venue, and we were like, can we just go to the show? Like, I just wanted to see Buddy and see him play. I didn't expect to meet him or anything like that. But we found, somehow we found our way backstage, and I was able to meet him and right before the show, which was really awesome. And I remember walking into his dressing room, and I was just a shy 8-year-old kid with, I had a polka dot tie, because I knew he loved polka dots is his thing. And so I did the whole thing. I dressed up in a suit. I had the polka dot tie, had the whole thing, which was really funny. And I had my Squier Fender Stratocaster with me, and so I had him sign it, and he talked to me for a little bit, and I probably said 2 words because I was like a shy little kid, and then all of a sudden he asked me to play a few licks on the guitar, and I did, and after I did that, he said, "You'll be ready when I call you." And that was that moment, and that was it. And he ended up calling me on stage that night, literally right from the crowd. So I was in the crowd, and he was on stage, and just literally pulled me out, and played the last like half an hour of the show. And it was a crazy moment. And people seem to still talk about it today. So it was really a moving experience, and just struck me in so many different ways. And I had no idea what was to come of that. All I remember was just going home going, wow, this was the greatest night of my life. And it was just crazy. And and then some time passed, and I just went back to school like any 8-year-old would. And no one knew who Buddy was that was going to my elementary school. I mean, no one really had any idea who Buddy Guy was. And so I sort of felt like kind of a misfit in a way, because it was like, no, it was kind of my own little thing, that like my own little secret, because I was considered myself, oh, well, I'm the cool kid because I know who Buddy Guy is, and all these cool people. And so a few months go by, and then we hit summer of July of 2007, and Buddy was coming back to Lowell, Massachusetts, to play the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. And they do, I don't think it was wasn't the auditorium. It was like they do like a summer concert series every summer. So he was playing outside, and at this point we had had his manager's contact info from the first night. So I think my dad had hit him up to try to make it happen again. And same kind of deal. We went to the show and got to say hi to him again, and he was super nice to me and remembered me from the first time, because this was only maybe 3 or 4 months, like not much time had passed. And then he had called me up again, and I came out, and the second time for me, I felt like really solidified his genuine love and appreciation for me, I guess. And being a little kid, I had no idea that a guy like that could ever have, any sort of respect for a kid like me. And yeah, and it was really awesome. And it kind of just propelled into the next step, which was the, him eventually asking me to go on tour with him and open some shows for him with his band. It was really it was really like a quick thing. Like it just began to happen. Like before I could even really blink my eyes. That sounds corny, but like it's so true. Like he just began to just have me out and eventually putting a record out on me and all of this stuff happening in maybe 3 or 4 years. Like after that, like it was just happening.
Wow. How did you get into the blues?
Well, I got into the blues. I mean, for me, it was the Crossroads Festival that really got me into it, because I was listening to, what they call blues-based music, which is rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to like Clapton, and I was listening to, obviously, the Beatles was the main band that I was really into, and the Stones and the Allman Brothers Band. And my parents were both Deadheads and still are, proudly. So I was listening to a lot of the Grateful Dead stuff and the solo Jerry Garcia stuff. Like they'd play me everything. I mean, Dire Straits, they'd play me, like Santana, all this stuff. So, I mean, I was exposed to all of that. But they weren't necessarily into the blues. I think it's just seeing Buddy and play on stage at Crossroads was really that moment for me that got me into that style of music and just I don't even know if it was the music that excited me. I think it was just more of seeing him do his thing that was just like so like just to me just badass and just so super cool. So that was the moment for me that I got into that. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about your dad. Well, what do you have to say about your dad?
Oh, that's no one's ever asked me that. That's cool. Well, my dad is a really awesome person. He's a drummer, which is cool. And he was in a Grateful Dead cover band for about 30 years called Pearly Baker. And
oh my God.
Yeah. So he's definitely he's done his homework with the Grateful Dead and all that stuff. So
yeah, I worked at UMass and did a lot with Mike.
Mike
who's
Mahoney.
Yeah, exactly. Small world.
Yeah. So he, my dad was really, really instrumental in showing me, in my opinion, the right music you should show any kid that wants to listen to music, and very both. And I say this about both of my parents. I mean, they both really just let me do in a parental way, not let me do whatever I want in the way of, they were super awesome parents and very, and, I guess, I mean, they were just very supportive of whatever I wanted to do and whatever I was inspired by and what I felt like I wanted to do. And they were, they just let me kind of run free in that way. And, super, very, very lucky and to have that as a kid, because, I never felt like there was any pressure that I had to practice for 8 hours a day or do something crazy like that. They were just very like, here's what we're listening to. Here's what we love. And if you love it, that's cool. And if you don't, that's cool too. But I just happened to really love it and really get into it. Yeah, I mean, and they were just, all the way throughout my whole entire childhood, they were just always very supportive and just really just believed in me and let me kind of, with their guidance, of course, and their support, but just let me kind of discover things on my own and pretty much gave me the basics and then let me do my thing and get into more music because of the music that they were exposing me to.
Now, is mom musical as well?
She listens to music. That's about as musical as she gets.
Okay.
But no, not a musician. No.
Okay. Just a curiosity. Now, I mean, the thing about Dad, from what I'm gathering, being a professional musician, I mean, he got paid, so he was a professional musician.
Yeah. He wouldn't
And even though
say,
it was
but I know he is. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it wasn't he wasn't just a guy who was like, oh, I want my kid to have a career I didn't have, kind of thing. It was like he knew what good music was. I mean, Pearlie Baker, like, didn't last 30 years for nothing. I
No.
mean, they had a following, you know, that's I don't think there's anybody else that I can think of in this area that has lasted as long as they have. I mean, there's been solo performers and a couple of duos, but nobody like them. So he heard something and saw something in you, and I'm sure he had to sort it out. Like, is this really um, is this for real, or am I just being a dad and making my kid a little bit more than what he's actually out, what he actually is. And obviously he just saw something in you that he thought needed to be developed, to use that word.
Yeah, I
And
think. Yeah, you're right about that because I think, yeah, I obviously don't know what it feels like to be a dad, but I can kind of guess of what it felt like for him seeing his kid play guitar and being. I think it was, I think he probably saw the drive that I had for it because I wasn't one of those kids that was throwing around a football and playing baseball, and I would do that when I was a kid with like friends, but I wasn't a sports person really. So I really, the main drive and what was really made me, what fulfilled me and what made me really really happy was music, and it was I think he probably saw that and probably went, if he's this into this, let's go, let's just like, see what happens with this, because you never want to, I guess you never want to push your kid to do anything they don't want to do. And I think, I was so young but so into it, and it was just like I didn't want to, like, for a long time I didn't want to do anything else but play and listen to music. And I had friends. I mean, I wasn't I wasn't a kid that had a hard time making friends. I wasn't like that or anything. But when I came home from school, or if there was a rainy day outside, I would be in my basement or in my room or wherever I was in the house. I'd be playing guitar and I'd be listening to music and getting inspired in whatever way I could. So I think, yeah, to answer that, I think he probably saw the drive and saw me really focused and really into this. So I think he probably just assumed, like, let's see what happens.
yeah, I mean, to use an old-fashioned saying, you are like a moth to the flame.
Right.
There are people, artists of all genres who know or knew. I've interviewed a lot of people on the show, and I hope to keep interviewing, many more. But some of them can tell you the exact moment the light bulb went off in their head, or that ta-da, or that damn, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I don't care, how tough it
Yeah.
gets. This is what I want. But then for the blues, I mean, I think that's one of the things that people are like, he's a kid. What the hell's he got to bitch about? Because that's what blues is, right? It's coordinated bitching.
Yeah,
But
people. Yeah. I never really think of myself as a blues person. I mean,
yeah,
that I was affiliated with Buddy Guy for a long time, and
mm,
and me and Buddy are still really really good friends today. And but it was always something that people, like, when I started to play with Buddy and I started to do shows, but that wasn't necessarily what my real love was when I discovered music. My musical discovery was I guess my favorite people, and still to this day, are people that really don't have a genre, and don't really categorize themselves as anything but just a musician. And that's kind of what always has been my goal throughout this whole entire lifespan is just, musically, I've just always wanted to remain genreless, and the thing about blues is that, I think I sort of got thrown into it because I was so affiliated with Buddy, and I was playing shows with him, and I was, the early videos of me playing were I was playing blues songs and I was doing solos and stuff like that. So that's what people sort of started to call me. They throw around the word blues prodigy, or they throw around the word, guitar phenom, whatever it is, whatever the new whatever the new term is to this day. I don't know. I always just brush that off, because I never considered myself to be a real authentic blues guitarist or blues person. I love the blues, and I respect the blues, and I think it's the basis of all great music. But yeah, it's just I always thought it was just funny, but I respected it because that genre and the word blues really almost was able to I have a career because of that, so I really don't take it for granted, and definitely have the uttermost respect for it.
Yeah, it was your other mother kind of thing. The the clue there is also what you're saying. You like, the Beatles. The Beatles were almost you couldn't peg those guys down. Just when you thought, you had them pegged, I mean, they were off on something else. They invented so many directions, orchestrations. I mean, when every album came out was another jaw dropper. Like, where did these guys come from? And you know the history of them. They went all the way back to Skittles. I mean, they were British boys being affected by black music. That somehow went through a process and ended up as Skittles, and then what was it? Paul McCartney's dad was a straight musician, so to speak. Was in an orchestra or a band, and so they were like rebellious, and they were geniuses all at the same time. And it was a mixture, I guess, that will rarely ever be put together again. And then there's groups like Rusted Root. Which I guess you can't really, well, unfortunately they didn't last too long. But I remember when I first heard the first track of their first album, I just didn't know. It was like, oh my God, this is so different, so refreshing, so new. What are you doing now?
I'm making a new record, actually. I've spent this last year and a half creating this album with a producer by the name of Oliver Lieber. And we've been at this thing for it feels like a decade. But I started writing this record at the beginning of 2018. Actually, no, it was more mid 2018, and did the whole thing in LA. We wrote it in LA at the same place. The producer, has a home studio, so we were just in there for 5 or 6 months. I'd fly back and forth, and we'd write, and it turned into having 13, 14, 15 songs ready to go and record. So that's what we did, and an album came out of it. So I'm really, really, really excited for that, and excited to put that out at who knows when now. But it's something that I'm very, very proud of, and I think it's my best album that I've made so far. So I'm really proud and happy about it. Yeah.
Is it true that the first album isn't the toughest album? That it's the second one?
Absolutely. Well, for a lot of artists it is. I think for me it was weird because I put out my first record when I was 11. Mm-hmm. So not many people, I guess, can say my first record came out when I was 11 years old. So I think for me it's more of a journey rather than, because I didn't have that 22, 23-year-old pressure of like, okay, this is your first record and it does really well, and now you have to follow it up with the second one to the sophomore record to be just as good, and you have all the success. Like, I was just, everything about what happened to me and why I'm where I am today, I think it was just so gradual and just so very, very baby steps. There wasn't this moment of like, oh my God, I'm famous now and I've got all this stuff happening, and it still really isn't like that right now. It's kind of been a very, gradual journey so far. So I've never felt that pressure,
Yeah.
I will though. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. That's for sure. Have you ever met Ernie Bach?
I have actually. You know, it's funny. Me and Ernie met when I was a kid. He actually he had invited me to I think it was like a party that he was having that his Ernie and the Automatics were playing, and he had me sit in with them actually. That was wicked fun. That was in maybe I was like 5, 6. I was really really young.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how. I think he may have heard of me from Ellen or what. Maybe I did. I think I did a local TV thing when I was a little kid, so he might have seen that. But yeah, he invited me, and he's super nice. I love him, man. He's a great guy.
He's a person. I mean, the whole history with his dad and so on and so forth. And yes, he's well off. But the one thing that here's a story that have you ever met John Methia?
John Matt. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
he's a TV producer.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
I lost track. I think he had the last time I knew it was like 8 Emmy Awards for television production. But I used to work with John, and I wrote a pilot script for Ernie's television show that they tried to shop around called Bach On, and it's I was told a story that he opened up a Maserati dealership, um, and he had the grand opening, and the guests were a little miffed at him because he didn't pay any attention to them. He had hired a group from Berkeley School of Music, and he hung around with them because that's all he cared about. He just cares about the music. So he's a musician that was lucky to be born, to who he was born to, but that's his passion is music. He's quite a character.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
Ernie's a
mean,
great. Yeah.
I mean, you'd walk into his house and you bump into members of Boston or the Scorpions. If you ever meet John Methia, ask him to tell you some stories. They're they're outlandish. Let me tell you. Let me tell
Nice.
you. So here we are in this area in the South Coast, and here you're one of the people who are an emissary in a way because your name is connected to New Bedford, um, and you've been away and you've come back, away on gigs and so on and so forth. Looking at the creative community, um, what what's your take on what's going on? Have we, are we even near the peak as a creative community? We've been named like most creative. It's in some ranking in 4 different polls over the years. Uh, what do you think about the creative community overall?
Well, I think the creative community here in just even just New Bedford is pretty awesome. I think there's a lot of talent that is in New Bedford, and I am super thankful that I've had I've had very very great opportunities throughout my life that I'm forever grateful for and thankful for. But a lot of my earliest musical memories, I don't think I'd be standing here if I hadn't been introduced to some of the local guys that play, the even play the New Bedford, the New Bedford venues. And it's important to me because a lot of those people, I mean, they relentlessly just have played for years and years and have just dedicated their whole entire lives to playing music, whether that meant playing for, 1,000 people or playing for 2 people at a bar. I mean, it really is inspiring to that they have done that and they've put their entire life for that, and they've been so good at doing that. So yeah, I think that the creative community, I mean, especially just around here and this area, has always been really good. And it's sad because of kind of what we're going through right now with the coronavirus and places obviously not being able to be open to have live music, and it's doing damage to those people, and I feel for them, and I definitely can relate to it, and so it's a crazy time, but it's, yeah, I mean, I think New Bedford in general, I think as long as there's music, as long as those people stick around here, and as long as the restaurants still and the clubs stay open, I think it'll always be a really great community to to go see music, because the people are just, you can't beat this area for seeing music, I think. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I've been to Nashville, I've been to LA, and I've been all over the world, and yeah, the music scenes are great, but there's I think there's something special, and maybe that I feel that way because I'm from here, and I'm sure people that are from Nashville and are from LA feel the way they feel about their communities too. But there's a special, and I think you can ask anybody that lives around here the same question. I think they'd probably feel similar to how I feel about it. There's just this really this family thing, that bond feeling that you have when you go out to these places to see people, like we were talking about Pearly Baker, and they have this cult following that have been there since 1980 something, whenever they became a band. That's just so moving, like to still, they must just go crazy. I mean, to see the same, some of the same people that were seeing them in the 80s are still going out and seeing them now. And that is just incredible to that's still happening. And other artists too. I'm good friends with another really great singer-songwriter. Her name is Rebecca Correa, and
which I hope to get to speak with. So you put a good word for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she actually, we wrote a really cool song together that's going to be on my new album. But yeah, she's really talented and super, just one of the sweetest people I know. She's from around here, and so there's so many people that I think are very special and very great that have come out of this area.
Look at Tavares. I mean, I don't know how I almost forgot about them. I lived next door to their aunt, so they were always in and out of the house, and I mean, they were phenomenal. When you think of, and again, I think maybe in New Bedford we still have this thing. Now, you're much younger. I don't know if the attitude has changed, but I don't know if at one time in this area we had this ability to just put ourselves down. We didn't need anybody to do it for us. We just did it on our own, and it's crazy because so much has come out of this area, and there's so much more that can possibly come out of here. I think you are probably a hero to some little boy or little girl who they want to follow in your footsteps. So that's an awesome responsibility to have as a performer.
I agree. I think it's very, it's important to me, because I've had people, not even just from around here, but just when you see these kids come out to the shows, it's just, that's my favorite thing and that really, it puts a lot of things into perspective. It gets your, not that I don't consider myself to have an ego, other than maybe a musical ego, but nothing personal. But it definitely puts, if you're having like a bad week, or you're having if you thought you had a bad show, or when that little kid comes up to you and just you see their innocent face, and they're just so they because I was that kid meeting Buddy Guy or meeting whoever I was meeting, and I can totally relate to how they may be feeling towards me, seeing me just play a show and wanting to do what I'm doing. So it really is, it's a really moving thing to me to see that kid, whoever that is, come along and have a picture with me, or if I sign their guitar, because that puts things into perspective, and really and makes you go, okay, this is, and it's like just a healthy reminder, and it, they don't have to spell it out for you, but it's like just a healthy reminder of just this is why you do what you do. It's not for anything else but for this reason. It's to make people feel good and have a really positive effect on people, and not do it for your own ego or your own, that's really the lessons that I've learned from the people that I've been around for years, is to just don't have a big head. The big head doesn't get you anywhere. because that's what Buddy used to call it when we would talk. He'd be like, "Yeah, they got that thing called the big head." You know, that was always his quote. And you can easily get that, and you can easily become somebody that you weren't before. And I've seen that happen to a lot of people. I've seen that happen to friends, you know, or people that were friends once, you know, see them do that. And it never really works out. It never really, if you're like that, it's always gonna, it's gonna bite you in the ass eventually, you know? So you really have to be conscious of that. And as you move along, because really important to me to always have in the back of my head, this could all be over tomorrow. You know, this could all go away, you know, at some point. So you really just have to take every day for what it is, and just be grateful that I'm able to do what I love, being 21 years old, and you know, just continue just to grow and get better.
Yeah, I mean, because you know, as another old saying, your whole life is ahead of you. You know, and there are people that you know, as they started to rise, all of a sudden, you know, the big head, it just started going stupid, and the ego is the question I was going to ask you about, because you know, when I first met you, you know, you get the vibes right away from somebody, you know, I remember I had a wine show that we had done a pilot. My neighbor Mike Daigle and I, we had a local wine show called The Wine Guys, and we made it to, you know, we were on Channel 6 as a segment, and then we had our own show there, and we shot a pilot for public television. And you know, always in the back of my head is like, well, if, you know, we ever get to be celebrities or whatever, I just hope I don't turn into a moron. And I said, I always want to be like Julia Child. She is like not just a celebrity; she is a god, you know.
Right.
And she, you know, she's like in the pantheon of the PBS gods. I mean, she's one of the people holding up the building, and there she is. And so, I think a lot of it, and I'm going to compliment your parents. I've only met your dad, but I'm going to compliment your parents, because, you know, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and that's for sure. And it really shows on you, Quinn.
Thanks.
You're welcome. One more, two more questions. One more question is, do you see more happening in this area? I mean, now that you know what you know, and you've done what you've done, and you've done, you know, can you bring any of that stuff back here? You know, to uplift people. I mean, we've got so many musicians here. Can you create is there a possibility for someone to create a venue that will just nurture these up and coming people?
I would love to do that one day. You know, when I am in the position eventually, if I ever am, to do that. I mean, you know, for me, the venues that stick out around here are places like the Narrow Center, and places, and even the Zeitarian, because of you know, because of obviously the history that I have with the Z. But the Narrows just sticks out. I mean, I do a residency. It's been about 6 years in a row now, and we sell out every year we play. We always sell 2 or 3 nights out, and it's always so much fun, and always my favorite time of the year. We normally do it in December, and it's become, I say residency because it feels like it has become sort of an annual thing for me. And the Narrows has always seemed to bend that venue around in this area to really nurture up and coming artists, because I you know, I remember, like, you know, talking to one of the people that run the Narrows, and he was saying how they used to have, like, you know, Susan Tedeschi come in and play, and they have all these people that are now really, really well respected artists that are playing, you know, obviously internationally now. I mean, they're incredible artists that come out and playing, and, you know, it's cool to kind of hear that they once were playing for 250 people at the Narrows, you know. So yeah, that's really the venue to me that I think about, that just you know, has definitely helped me a lot, and is, you know, just you know, it seems like a lot of good artists come out of the Narrows and places like that. I mean, I've played a lot of venues around the world, and you know, in different you know, different scenarios and different lineups, and you know, obviously when I would play with Buddy, we'd play, you know, for thousands of people. but it's a different experience when you're just playing on your own and headlining. So I think that's just a great. That's the venue that I think about, just being just such a great venue for me and a lot of other up and coming people.
Oh, great. One last question, so and then we're going to wrap it up. What do you say to parents that are trying to encourage their child or children like your parents did, and what do you say to the kids themselves?
Well, the parents, I would say, because it's funny, because a lot of parents have come up to me. I love getting that question from them, because they ask me all the time, because they're with sometimes they're with their kids and sometimes they're not with their kids, but they'll come up to me and go, man, how did they ask me about everything and how I've gotten to where I'm at and all that stuff, and then they go, I have a son or I have a daughter that loves playing piano or loves playing guitar or singer, dancer, or whatever it is. And they go, how do they get to you? Like, how do they get to your level? And what do they, and there's really no scientific answer. And there's really no, it's all personal, and it's all based on timing and it's based on a lot of things, but mostly timing and luck. And also, if what I would tell parents would just be like, don't ever push something on your son or daughter if they don't want to do it. Because I think as a parent, and I'm talking based on opinion because I'm not a parent, but
Yeah.
but like when you your son or daughter, I feel like when you know that they really, because you know them best, and obviously and like when they're into something and when they're not into something. And I think my parents knew, like we were talking about before, they knew that I had a drive for it and I had a passion for it very, very early on. So I think if you can see that right away in your son and daughter, appreciate it and then nurture it, but don't ever say, well, you did that, all right, then now you got to get serious about it. Now you got to do this and now you got to do that. Because I don't think that will make that really, because I think it's all about, especially as a kid, it's very important to know that it's all about innocence of it. It's the innocence of just watching somebody play on stage that you connected with, that you were like, wow, that's so cool. I'd love to do that. Because when you start throwing in, I mean, that and because it's like when you were saying you have your whole life ahead of you, like that all the serious work and all that stuff, that worry about that when you're older. I think the beginning of it is all about the innocence of it, and that's what I loved about it, and so that's what I say to people and parents of kids, and just don't force anything, and for the kids, it's the same thing. Practicing is important. I've gotten to spend some time with Carlos Santana, and he hates the word practice, and I feel the same way he does. I mean, it's like practicing that wet word, and that's the other thing. It becomes now it's like a job or something, and it is a job. I mean, because there's a difference between doing this as a hobby and then realizing there's almost a switch that happens when you realize, okay, this is a career and this is a 24/7 thing. But young kids and they just want to play and whatever. I just basically say, if you love it, then do it, and if the minute you don't love it, stop doing it, because it's music to me is not something that can be forced and can be it's a very unique job or unique thing to be doing, because it's based on inspiration and it's based on what makes it's based on a feeling that you have.
Yeah.
So it's really something that you have to always be wanting to do and wanting to be a part of, because I think the minute you don't want to do it, I think you should try to probably go do something else, and I haven't felt that way yet about it, so I'm still in a good spot musically to just keep doing it and keep trucking through. But I mean, that's probably what I would tell a kid.
Great. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Quinn. I want to wrap it up. Thank you again, Quinn Sullivan. And this wraps up another episode of the In Focus podcast, brought to you by the South Coast Artist Index. And with that, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the South Coast Artist Index podcast. For more information, please visit theartistindex.com.